it is over for Ja Morant, because yesterday the NBA commissioner Adam Silver came out and he told us league has come to a decision on how it's going to go forward with Ja Morant. Now, as you all know, Ja Morant has been in the news lately because he got suspended again, this time by his team, the Memphis Grizzlies, because just 2 months ago he was suspended by the NBA. They gave him an 8-game suspension because he went on Instagram Live and he flashed a gun. And then also pictures of him came out in a strip club. It's just been a tumultuous season for Ja Morant, right? Dating all the way back to early this season. If we go back to December, Ja Morant made the news because apparently he threatened the Indiana Pacers team bus, him and his friend, after a game. In order to intimidate the Indiana Pacers players, they went towards the bus, the Indiana Pacers team bus, and apparently someone pointed what seemed like a laser on a gun at the team bus. So he was in trouble because of that. Negative news coverage because of that. But then a story broke out alleging that Ja Morant got into an altercation with a 17-year-old last year over a basketball game in which Ja Morant punched the 17-year-old, and then also he went inside and then came out with a gun strapped to his waist. Ja Morant, after the story came out, denied it, right? He said that he only did that as in self-defense because the kid threw the ball at him first, and that just didn't look good for Ja Morant. And then, as you all know, he got suspended because he went and flashed a gun on IG Live in Denver, and the problem was that the NBA was trying to figure out how the gun got from Ja Morant's home, which is in Memphis, Tennessee, all the way to Denver, and it was a huge problem for the NBA. Well, now Ja Morant didn't learn, and he's back again in the news, and this is what Adam Silver had to say about the Ja Morant incidents. Take a look at this.
So in assessing what discipline is appropriate, if that's the case, we look at both the history of prior acts, but then we look at the individual player's history as well. And so that, and the seriousness, of course, of the conduct. So those are all things that get factored. It's not an exact science. It comes down to judgment at the end of the day on the part of me and my colleagues in the league office. In terms of the timing, we've uncovered a fair amount of additional information. I think since I was still asked about the situation, I would say we probably could have brought it to a head now, but we made the decision, and I believe the Players Association agrees with us, that it would be unfair to these players and these teams in the middle of the series to announce the results of that investigation. And
as you just saw, I think Adam Silver is very disappointed in Ja Morant. As he said, the investigation into Ja Morant uncovered additional information that they didn't know. So right now, the NBA is sitting on additional information that it hasn't released to the public yet. And the reason they haven't released to the public yet is because they're saying they don't want to take away from the NBA Finals, which is a very reasonable excuse. It's a reasonable thing to say. If they were to drop the suspension now, it would suck up all the attention from the NBA, and it would take away from the guys that worked hard to be here in the NBA Finals. The NBA is going to sit on this until the NBA Finals is over, and then they are going to announce what they're going to do with Ja Morant. Now, my thoughts on this is it's not looking good for Ja Morant at all. It's looking really, really bad, because it seems like the NBA is going to be taking in pattern of Ja Morant, what he's been doing. And if you look at just Ja Morant this season, it seems like Ja Morant might have a problem. I don't know what the problem is, but Ja Morant in his head thinks it's okay to behave as a hoodling, a hood rat, someone who thinks he can hurt people. And it isn't just about the gun that's a problem. There were two separate instances in which Ja Morant threatened to beat someone up. One of them being at finish line when his mother, who was having problems with the cashier, called him to come solve a problem, and Ja Morant showed up with 9 members of his gang, of his crew, of his friends. And the cashier employee got so scared, he locked himself in the bathroom. And Ja Morant went there, knocking on the door, wanting him to come out. And then afterwards, he asked when this employee would get off, and just threatening people like that. And then there was another instance in which there was a security guard in which Ja Morant threatened the security guard and he felt unsafe. So Ja Morant definitely has a behavioral problem, right? And it isn't just about the guns. Now, the guns is bad. right? The guns is bad because Ja Morant, if he's waving guns on screen and it is being recorded, it doesn't look good for the NBA. You can't have one of your premier stars that you plaster everywhere in order to promote your brand be associated with gang violence or anything remotely close that, or anything that looks like gang violence. You can't have that. You can't be a multi-billion-dollar corporation and associate with that. Why? Because other brands are not going to want to associate with you. Ja Morant's not getting that through his head. You can't be an ambassador to Nike, to Gatorade, and be a premier star of the NBA, and then on your off time, you're waving guns on Instagram Live like you're a rapper from the south side of Chicago. You just can't do that. If I were to guess, it's looking like Ja Morant's gonna get a significant suspension. He might also get fined. I think Ja Morant will either get a 50-game suspension or it might be the whole season. The reason I say this is because just a few weeks ago, when Adam Silver did his first interview on this Ja Morant situation, he looked so disappointed in Ja Morant. And the reason being, he had Ja Morant the first time around he suspended Ja Morant. He had Ja Morant in his office, right? And they talked face to face. And he tried to ask Ja Morant, is there a problem? What's going on, right? How do we fix this? And Ja Morant looked him dead in the eyes, told him, I don't have a problem. This is it. I've learned my lesson. He gave an apology. And then 2 months later, Ja Morant does the same thing. So Adam Silver starts thinking he got fooled. Adam Silver's like, man, I thought we were cool with this, right? And so he looked very, very disappointed in Ja Morant. And the fact that he just got suspension 2 months ago plays a role into that, because of the same thing, plays a role into that. Adam Silver doesn't want to do this, right? Because Ja Morant, again, is a premier guy for the NBA. They plaster his face everywhere when they're promoting games. When they're promoting Memphis Grizzlies game, they're not putting Desmond Bain. They're not putting Dylan Brooks. It's Ja Morant, right? It's Ja Morant. He's very disappointed because this is hurting more people than Ja Morant thinks it's hurting. Because if I were to guess, I think that Ja Morant thinks it's probably, oh, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just having fun. But he doesn't see the business side of it. And so I can definitely see Ja Morant getting suspended for a year. I think Gilbert Arenas got suspended from the NBA due to gun problems, right? So the NBA doesn't take lightly to gun issues at all. I think first time around, when they suspended Ja Morant only 8 games, I think they were lenient on him. Why? Because Ja Morant is 23 years old, right? And then also, Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies were going to make the NBA playoffs, right? And they were a big contender. And to suspend him for a playoff would be really detrimental to the NBA in terms of bottom line, in terms of viewership and rating, right? So those are 2 reasons that they didn't really give him a huge suspension. Ja Morant came out and he apologized. But this time around, NBA, if it thinks this could be a threat to their bottom line going forward, and Ja Morant doesn't learn from his past behavior, they are not going to play around. They're going to neutralize the beast by cutting the head off. They're going to give him a huge suspension in order for it to really drill in his head that this is not okay, right? And then other possibilities that I think is going to happen with Ja Morant is Ja Morant could be fined maybe $1 million. Really let him know, listen, this is not okay. Also, maybe he could be deregulated to the G League for maybe beginning of the season, right? The Memphis Grizzlies already took their stance. They suspended him. And so the NBA has to give a very severe punishment. And then also, maybe they trade Ja Morant to a city that doesn't have that much gang influence. You guys remember, Memphis is very tied to gang influence. I mean, Young Dolph got shot in a literal cookie store, bakery. And Ja Morant's very into the hip-hop culture. Maybe they trade him to Toronto. Maybe they trade him far away to a place where they think that stuff just isn't going to fly. Maybe Portland, in order to save face, in order to stop this kid from ruining his career and ruining the NBA. Would you be in favor of trading Ja Morant outside of Memphis, or trying to get him some sort of mentor to the point where they can mentor him and say, maybe the NBA could have some sort of, not a parole officer, but someone who keeps an eye on him for a year, like a probation handed down by the NBA. I could see that happening. That would be a really good choice in which someone follows Ja Morant around to make sure he's not getting into that nonsense. But yes, those are just my thoughts on Ja Morant. If you like this kind of content, make sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like underneath this video, and until next time, kids.